What's something your therapist said that was life-changing? Story 1. I asked him, how do you process all of the negative feelings that are projected at you? And he said, they aren't my feelings. I don't think he realized how profound that was. Story 2. Not every friend has to be a close friend. You're able to have different kinds of friends, like levels of how close they are or how much you confide in them. I struggle with being a loner, and it affected my mental health a lot because I could count my friends on one hand. I thought of people as acquaintances or close friends with no gray area. This advice helped me appreciate more of the people who I'm not super close with, but they still have a presence in my life. Story 3. As a teen in therapy, I used to call myself a potato because of my ugly appearance. The woman I had sessions with actually gave me a small plastic potato replica and had written on it in Sharpie, "Some people like potatoes." I think it was just the effort she went to trying to help me, cheer me up, that really affected me and my judgment of professional help. I was an angsty kid. And after that, I took getting help much more seriously. Story 4. You aren't that interesting. I would have panic attacks and paranoia that people were out to get me, PTSD, etc., and would think that people were judging me in grocery stores because my toddler was crying or that my hair was messy. And honestly, it boiled down to, nobody cares. We're all trying to survive and get through the day, and what someone looks like or does, we observe and move on. Nobody is that interesting. Nobody, for the most part, is going to remember a toddler crying for a brief moment, or the way I was dressed, or if my makeup was perfect. Nobody. The only person who will remember is me and how I made myself feel. Story 5. I had been in therapy for about a decade and was talking to her about online dating. I said it was like being sucked into a whirlpool, in that there is only one small step between just playing around the edges and being sucked into the thing. She asked me why I used that example, and I said, because when I was 9, I was sucked into a whirlpool in a creek, and only survived because my brother managed to pull me out. This started a flurry of scribbling in her notebook I had not seen before. Also answered lots of things. Story 6. After going to couples counseling therapy for 6 months, one day the ex didn't show up. Ex, an abusive alcoholic who would get physically and verbally abusive. Therapist looked at me and said, "You do know he's never going to change?" For some reason, that made me realize I need to move on. That was the 3rd time I filed for divorce from him. Soon after he remarried and divorced, he continues to hit rock bottom, but has not changed. Fired for drinking on the job, vehicle repossessed, and now lives with his parents at the age of 60. Some people never change. Story 7. You don't need to please everyone all of the time. People who love you will not leave you because you disagree with them or do something they don't like. She nailed a lot of my behaviors back to the fact my biological dad left when I was 9 months old. I cannot cope with perceived abandonment and will do everything in my power to keep people happy because they might leave me. Story 8. After abruptly leaving an abusive relationship where, among other things, I physically could only listen to music with headphones on, otherwise I'd get yelled at for being disrespectful and too loud. Your life is your music. You were forced to mute yourself in that relationship, both literally with the music and with who you are as a person. It really made me realize how much of myself I hid away to try to appease someone else and make their life better when all it did was ruin mine. Over 3 years later, and I play my music out loud all the time with a different partner who loves it just as much as I do. Story 9. At the 3rd session with our couples counselor, my wife and I had a brief 10-minute private session with our therapist. During my session, the therapist said, "You need to accept the possibility of a divorce. You are trying to do the right thing and be supportive, but you can't do that alone. Your wife is taking advantage of you. You can't see how unhappy you are. That will change within a year after your divorce." Yep, she was right. My wife and I agreed to divorce during the 4th session. I am finally happy and love my life. Story 10. That the best way to get rid of cortisol is to scream, sing, or hum. Animals shake when their levels get too high to get rid of it. Our vagus nerve runs down our windpipe, so scream, sing. You'll feel better. Also, that guilt is a heavy and useless emotion. Put it down like a suitcase and walk off. Story 11. Your anxiety doesn't deserve to be ignored, as well as it doesn't deserve to be justified. You can't tell yourself, "It'll be fine," all the time while anxious. That's invalidating your feelings and burying them deeper. You need to tell yourself, maybe this will happen and maybe it won't, because that's what reality is. Life is full of uncertainty, and we need to find ways to accept it, or else you'll drive yourself insane. Story 12. You keep putting your bucket into the same empty well and expecting the bucket to be filled, and then you're devastated when it comes back empty. This was to help me find peace with a mom who can't show love, affection. What I learned was I have so many wells in my life that do fill my bucket. So why do I keep trying the empty one? Has served me so well, haha, for many years. Story 13. This summer I went from very fit to couch-ridden after a really severe injury. I was doing a virtual session with my therapist and bitching about how useless I was, and my dogs were sitting with me, so I said something about being more useless around the house than they are. My therapist asked what my dogs bring into my life. Easy, joy, humor, companionship, fun, loyalty, etc. Therapist asked, do you not bring any of those things into your spouse, friends, family's lives? Pretty much instantly ended my shame spiral. Story 14. That being a highly sensitive person is just how I'm built. It's not something that's wrong with me or something that I necessarily have to change. I just have to accept it, to learn my boundaries and needs and live accordingly. She said to think of violets and sunflowers, both flowers, but they are different. They require different things. Violets can't be transplanted and can be more easily damaged, but they're beautiful. Sunflowers can be beat up and moved around. They're resilient. One is not necessarily better than the other. They just are. Story 15. The answer is simple. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it's simple. I was doing what I always do in difficult, scary situations that I don't want to deal with head-on. I was overthinking and overcomplicating what I needed to do to be happy again. The answer was actually quite simple. I needed to tell my now ex-husband that I wanted a divorce. This statement just made it all clear to me. I was scared, so I was searching for a solution that would assuage that fear. But the truth was, there was no solution that wouldn't make this less difficult. The answer was simple, but it was okay to find it scary and difficult. Story 16. It wasn't my therapist, it was my doctor, but it was life-changing. I had been 300+ pounds all of my adult life, and I was in for a physical, and he said to me, you know, the first symptom of a heart attack is a heart attack. It was what caused me to change my life at age 54 and lose 110 pounds in 16 months, and I became a runner. I have run a race in all 50 states, 26 Halifax marathons, and 2 full marathons, Chicago and Boston. That one thing he said to me kicked off my decision for better health. That was 15 years ago. Story 17. She asked me why I was working in a job that was so extroverted when I'm clearly an introvert. She was like, if it's so draining and taxing, why do you do it? And all I could say was that I was good at it. So she replied, at what cost? Can you be good at other things that don't exhaust you so much? So I went to school for accounting and then quit my teaching job, and now I have a peaceful hybrid desk job. And I'm so much happier. I sleep better. I eat better. I stopped grinding my teeth, and my stress acne disappeared. I'm a whole new person. Story 18. OCD therapy. So a little bit different than traditional therapy. I was describing to my therapist all the things my OCD requires that I do during my daily routine. She said, if this were regular therapy, and if you were a minor describing these things as something your parents require, I would be required to call CPS for abuse. Really put into perspective how different my life is from people who do not suffer from OCD. Really motivated me on my recovery. Story 19. So as a psychologist that works with patients, it seems like people have good or horrible experiences with therapy here on this Reddit thread. Just want to remind everyone that the best predictor of who does well in therapy is found in the answer, do I like the person I'm talking to? If the answer is no, the chance of success drops significantly. If you've tried therapy before and it didn't work, it might have been a bad fit. Try again and again. You are worth trying for. Story 20. Bide your time. This has helped with my anxiety in so many ways. It doesn't matter if that time is 2 minutes, 2 weeks, or 2 months. It's okay to just not make a decision on something yet. I use this all the time still, and it really relives the pressure of having to have everything figured out in that second. I can take 2 weeks to decide and not worry for the entirety because I truly don't have to decide until that moment comes. Usually, with more time and less pressure, the answer is pretty obvious. Story 21. Not me, but best friend was in couples therapy because SO was unrepentant cheater. Therapist said to friend, you know, he's just an asshole, right? Friend left session and Googled divorce lawyers in the parking lot and started the divorce. Remarried after a couple of years. Good career, and her twin daughters are starting college this fall. Other people have said that therapist was unprofessional and should not have taken sides, but that frank assessment was accurate and was what my friend needed. Story 22. More or less, showering, washing your hair, and brushing your teeth actually entails a lot of steps when you think about it. You're already really burnt out. So with your ADHD and autism causing executive dysfunction, of course they become overwhelming tasks. Beating yourself up about not being able to handle that level of self-care doesn't help anyone and doesn't get you any closer to doing better. Let's talk about other things you can do to help with maintenance until you can work your way back up to regular functioning levels. I now have disposable toothbrushes, baby wipes, and dry shampoo for when things get bad and/or I'm in more physical pain than usual. Story 23. It wasn't in therapy, but in a parenting class. The advice was, you can put the baby down. It seems simple, but when you have a screaming baby and you've tried to figure out what's wrong, you've invested a lot of effort into problem solving and gotten no result. It's natural to want to double your efforts and try extra hard to solve the problem, but in reality, it may be that there is no solution. The baby is just crying. You can walk away and take a break and try again in 5 minutes. You can apply this philosophy to a lot of things in life, it turns out. Story 24. Neglect is a form of abuse. I thought that since my parents clothed me, fed me, sometimes took me to the doctor, gave me money when I desperately needed it, and didn't hurt or assault me, that I couldn't have been abused. It was a fucking eye-opening experience to hear that parents are supposed to fulfill more needs than just survival. She said it and I said something like, yeah, sure, I guess, but not really. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks that she was right. Everyone, kids especially, need more than having their base-level survival needs met. You need people in your life that you can depend on, that make you feel safe, that are present and engaged, and that don't make you grovel or feel guilty for every scrap of food or modicum of affection begrudgingly bestowed on you. Never having a moment where you feel safe, or like you can relax, or like you can count on someone else, results in growing up to be anxious, bad at relationships, bad at advocating for yourself, and bad at seeing yourself as worthy of love, respect, or success. You are taught from an early age that your wants and needs don't matter, so it's easier to just not have any. Story 25. You shouldn't speak with your mother. It was something I wanted to do for years upon years, but never felt right about doing due to societal norms and trying to set an example for my younger brother. I even tried to get her to come to therapy with me, but she denied because I would try to expose her. When I finally heard someone say what I had been thinking, I was so overwhelmed. I took her advice and cut all communication with her 4 years ago. In the time since then, I've felt such an increase in my overall mental health and have been able to stop abusing alcohol and drugs. Yes, I still drink, but not nearly as much as I used to. Story 26. Why are you continuing to give your abuser access to you? They moved on by cheating on you with someone else and destroyed your mental health on the way out. No matter what they tell you, they don't need you. They don't even want you. They want what you give them. That's how narcissists work. They suck every bit of joy out of you, and when they aren't getting it anymore, they throw you away and move on to the next victim. Shut that man out and let yourself heal. He doesn't deserve you, and you do not deserve to be abused. He will never change, and it is time to move on and grieve the person you loved, because they are dead to you now. Story 27. When trying to deal with my husband, who has lots of trauma and mental health issues, I said something like, I don't understand why he's overreacting this way. She dropped this bomb. He's reacting perfectly normal and as expected for someone who has experienced the trauma he has experienced. My brain imploded. It totally shifted how I viewed my husband. I suddenly understood him so much more and could now reframe my approach with him. Story 28. I had a hard time because I kept remembering all the negative things that had happened, but had a hard time recalling happy memories. I was very distraught. He said, happy memories don't help you survive. Bad memories do. They help you know what not to do. Now, from here on out, if you have a good laugh or memory, just write it in your phone. Now I have a notes app full of happy memories that I look at when I'm having a tough time. Story 29. Me, struggling to accept that I needed medication. There are people that have it worse than me and they're fine. What did people do back in the 1900s if they were depressed? Psychiatrist. They lived miserable, often short lives. If you had diabetes, would you try thinking yourself out of it? No. Your condition is exactly the same. Your body doesn't make enough of a chemical that it needs. This is a medical condition, not something you can fix by trying harder. Story 30. Had a big problem with overthinking my entire life and thinking of possible ways of everything going wrong. This gave a huge anxiety, especially when it came to getting pregnant. I was creating 1,000 scenarios for miscarriages day after day. My therapist told me, "You are already suffering for something that didn't happen. If it does happen, you will suffer again. What do you prefer, to suffer once when and if it happens, and none if doesn't? Or to suffer twice if it happens, and once if it doesn't?" I know it's not that big of an insight, but it made me realize that I was always choosing a sum of more suffering because I believed that it would prepare me for bad things. Truth is, if something bad happens, nothing will make me feel prepared. I will have to live through it anyway. So I chose less suffering, and it kind of worked. My anxiety dropped enormously because I finally realized that it was entirely my choice.